as we go through the session today, I love informal interactivities. I understand the value of formal presentation. I like informals the best because it helps keep everybody on their toes. It helps to really keep that energy going the way that we like to see it, that we would all like to see it go. So I said that to say this: throughout the presentation, feel free to use in the chat area in Zoom, you have the ability to raise your hand. And when you raise your hand, then one of the folks on the Students of UXD team will queue you up, basically so that you can present the question. So in other words, you don't have to wait until the end of the presentation. I am willing to stop at practically any time. I might have to finish a thought, but so that I don't forget. But other than that, feel free to fire away at your questions at practically any time. And we'll keep all of these informal. I don't want to have a formal approach. I want you to, when something is on your mind, I want you to be able to present it, and for me to be able to answer it as quickly as I can. Keep your interest and your curiosity heightened, and keep everybody sharp and focused. Is that fair? I hope so. So a little bit about me to get started today. I have over 20 years, just to give you my credentials first, so you know why in the world should I listen to this guy. So over 20 years, I've been working full-time in UX for 16 years, and I've been working as a total specifically for 25. I designed my first website in 1995, started learning and dabbling, and I started out as a self-learned professional in UX. I kept learning and reading books and looking at articles and things like that, and I just kept growing, and then eventually decided that this is definitely what I want to do. And I shifted and went into UX full-time after having been an instructional designer. That's part of the way I got into UX. And I was also a freelance web designer. And between the two, and because there are principles associated with both disciplines that were very, very closely related, very tightly connected, it made for an easy transition to go full-time from instructional design into UX design. Pretty easy. But I made that transition. I started off working at one of the leading banks in the Midwest. And I was there for just under 2 years, and I came to realize that if I wanted to learn more about UX, that it was going to be really important for me to get a little higher up on the food chain. I realized that working where I was not going to afford me the types of experiences that I needed to really vault myself forward. Comerica they wanted to move their headquarters from the Detroit area. That's where I am, by the way. I don't know how many Michiganders we have out there, but I was working here in their IT department in Auburn Hills, Michigan, but they shifted their headquarters from Detroit to Texas. When I saw that, I saw the writing on the wall. When it goes down and they start making changes, I'm not going to let anybody decide for me when I was going to go. I went ahead and I started looking around, but it wasn't about that as much as it was realizing the need to expand my horizons. I knew that in working there, I was not going to learn as much as I could if I worked at somewhere a bit higher on the food chain. And so I had applied at a local creative agency. Another shout out to the agency folks. There was an agency in Detroit. It used to be called Team Detroit. It's now called Global Team Blue. And it was really like a conglomerate. It was multiple agencies under one roof working together, mostly serving Ford Motor Company. And there were some other, we call them diversified accounts. We service a company called CompuWare. We service Covacent. We service Scott's. We service the Warrior brand. Those are the people that make hockey equipment, things like that. A lot of different companies like that. Jiffy Lube, I worked on their redesign years ago. And I didn't get the job the first time I applied. It was before I went to Comerica. I realized when I applied, here's a little tip for people from a career standpoint. When I first applied, because I know a lot of people have issues associated with being an entry-level UX, or how do you get your first job? Well, you make yourself marketable, you make yourself qualified, and then you keep on applying. And I'm going to share a note, shout out to Lee Andrees, one of my favorite recruiters out there, to Debbie Levitt, one of my favorite folks in the UX world. and how they said you don't want to apply for something, and I agree with them wholeheartedly. You don't want to apply for something when you don't qualify. Always measure your qualifications with the job posting and make sure that you're a fit. You don't want to be one of the people, the hundreds of people, and yes, this happens a lot, wasting the time of the recruiter, because then you'll become infamous instead of being useful. So you can, the potential is there. I posted for that first job, interviewed for that UX job, didn't get it. And we didn't call it UX, by the way, and I'm going to have a history lesson for you in a moment. We were information architects. I should go ahead and say that as well. We were information architects. I didn't get the job. Disappointed, crushed, but you just get back up. You get knocked down, you get up, you dust yourself off, and you go for it again. And you might have to apply a lot of times before you actually get what you're looking for, but that's just the way the game is played. You don't want to be like a lot of people I've encountered over my travels in the UX world. A lot of people have a sense of entitlement. It's not going to help you beforehand. It's not going to help you when you get the job, and it's not going to help you in your interactions when you do finally get that interview if you have a sense of entitlement. You'll communicate it. It'll come across in your voice and your tone, and that won't work well for you. So once you get that interview, be grateful for it, be excited, and let that drive you. That will get you much further than having a sense of entitlement. So a little digression there. I applied it was Team Detroit again back then, got the job the second time around, but that first time it taught me how to market myself. It taught me how to interview for an agency job. I get the job, and just like I thought, it was the best experience, one of the best experiences I had in my entire professional career, and it vaulted me forward. Since that time, I've worked at other creative agencies, including Digitas LBI, which is the world's largest digital design organization. Had a ball working there. We serviced General Motors when I was there, and Duracell. I've done work for Ford. I've done work for GM. I've done work for Jiffy Lube. I've done work for IBM. I've done work for Ryder. I've done work for Quicken Loans. My career has spanned quite a bit over the course of those 16 full-time years. I'm just focused on that for now. But I just want to give you a nice picture of where I've been, the types of things I've worked on. I've worked on everything from a UX perspective, with the exceptions of VR. I haven't done any work on VR, and I haven't done any work on augmented reality. I know what they are. I know where UX fits, and UX is basically pervasive. Once you learn true UX elements, methods, methodologies, and apply them in one arena, you can actually transition them to all. So you're not, if you didn't have automotive, you can't work in automotive. Some recruiters believe that, but it doesn't apply. UX is pervasive. You can easily move not only in the digital arena, but you can apply it to non-digital things. You can apply it to a layout in a retail store. You can apply it to a handheld diagnostic tool. You can apply it to a work cart, like I did when I worked for Bosch, and got to work on ergonomics instead of websites and mobile apps and things like that. So it's thought that that's what UX is about, but it's not really true. UX is applicable across the board. So another digression, but wanted to drop that note there. We'll breeze through this really quickly, but I think I've communicated a lot about where I've come from in my background. Today, I should close off this part by talking about what I'm doing today. I am a senior LX designer at Michigan State University. And what is LX, somebody may say? Well, let me give you a tidbit about what we call the experience landscape. There is BX, which is brand experience, which is actually inclusive. It's not something you really design for. It's inclusive of everything in the experience world. Then you have CX, which is the next largest one. CX, customer experience, covers everything in the experience from the time that somebody first learns about a brand all the way to the end when they are going back into the purchasing funnel. We're talking about dealing with customer support, things like that, not just touching the solution, the site, the app, or things of that nature, but everything. So CX is bigger than UX, and it touches a lot more things, though you can do UX from a CX perspective, and I've done that in the past as well. Next in that list is UX. With UX, user experience, I'm not going to say a lot about that now because we're going to talk about that shortly, since that's what we're talking about in this first bubble busting segment. So you think you know UX? We're going to talk about that. I'm going to show you an illustration, and we'll point out what UX is a little later. And then last on that list is LX, or learning experience, where you apply things from the CX arena, from the UX arena, and you apply it so that when somebody is learning, they get the optimized experience, the optimized educational experience, I should say, the best learning experience possible. So that's the experience landscape as a whole: BX, CX, UX, LX, and basically BX is CX plus UX. So BX is automatically generated. If there's a learning experience there, you throw that into the equation as well. All of that makes up the experience landscape. So that's me. That's where I am now, full-time. I'm also a professor at Kent State University. I got one of my students, hey Betty, I saw Betty come in earlier. I teach at the entire Masters of User Experience Design curriculum at Kent State University. Check it out. If you ever have any questions about it, feel free to reach out to me. I teach at Lawrence Tech University in Southfield, Michigan. I teach undergrads there. And I'm on the verge of teaching at Michigan State University as well, because I'll be working with the CX master's program there. Other stuff that's here: I've got a master's, UX related master's degree from Syracuse University. I am a graduate of Kent State, as well as being a professor there. I'm going into my 6th year now, teaching at Kent State University, beginning my 6th year, I should say. I have my master's in UXD, my master's in information management. I speak a lot. That's why you see the World Usability logo there. That's my wife, Angela. She's on the call today as well. I'd like to convey some of these personal things so you just don't see me as a talking head that doesn't have a life. My wife and I have 4 cats. That's one of our little guys, Rocky, that's there. I love photography. If you ever want to talk to me about that, feel free to reach out. I love riding bikes. Lost 100 pounds once, and biking had a big part played a big part in that. And I love bowling. I've been an avid bowler for years. Used to be a member of the Professional Bowlers Association. I'm not anymore, but I used to be. And then we got the Michigan State there as well, because I'm a Spartan through and through. I have a grad cert in educational technology, and that is where I currently work. I'm working on a PhD, if anybody who cares to know that, right? Right now, 6 classes left, and I'll be done with my PhD in educational leadership. So pretty happy and excited about all these things. So now, all of that housekeeping stuff out of the way, let's get into the crux of the topic for today. When I talk to people who are maybe new in UX or maybe thinking about getting into UX, this illustration shows up in a lot of the talks that I give. And the purpose of sharing this talk is because it is very important when you are getting involved in any discipline to learn about the history. And so with a lot of people, I do this on my podcast a lot as well. I talk about the history of UX, because one of the problems that comes up when people are trying to get involved, people are not understanding what UX is. People think it's just focuses on UI, and I'll throw this out here now. Here's a bubble busting moment. I almost wish we had some visual effects to go with this, but if you ever have said UX, UI, mention them in the same breath. If you have ever thought that all UX is making things pretty, we want to bust that bubble today. There is absolutely no such thing as UX UI. Absolutely nothing. I had the job title in the past. It's something that it creates problems for us from a standpoint of what it is that we are doing. What value do we bring as UX professionals? If all we're doing is making things look good, you'll find out shortly we are extremely short-circuiting and we are devaluing what it is that we do as UX professionals. UI is a subset of UX. Yes, it is. It is a subset of UX, absolutely. But it is not UX. Matter of fact, it only represents a small portion of what happens as a UX professional. I'm going to give you a little homework. And it's to go to images.google.com and do a search for what's called the 5 planes. And you'll see an illustration. And the 5 planes was created by a man by the name of Jesse James Garrett, who doesn't get a lot of credit today. Actually, a lot of the forefathers and foremothers, if you will, associated with UX don't get a lot of coverage. And we'll talk about that as we go through the bubble busting segments and why that's a problem as well. He wrote a book called the Elements of User Experience. And in this book, he shared this plane, and the plane it's 5 levels in this illustration. And it talks about what the UX professional does at each one of the levels. I actually used the 5 planes for years as my own personal guideline for my software development life cycles. Whenever I was working on something, I would look at those 5 planes. It made it easy for me to approach my work, no matter where I work, no matter what methods they might be using. I still used the 5 planes. And it talks about making sure that you gather all your requirements, make sure you know where in the world you're going in the first place. That's one of the worst things that's happened to UX. And I'm going to cite Debbie Levitt again when she talks about lean UX, and someone out there, no doubt, have experience with lean or in agile environments. And Debbie always says that lean UX is neither lean nor is it UX. And she is absolutely right. I never forget working at a place once where I said, what are the requirements? They wanted to pride themselves on working on agile. And I said, well, what are the requirements? And they said, well, the requirements are that we do it. And I'm going, what? If you don't go on a trip back in the day before there was MapQuest and Google Maps, you didn't go anywhere without going to your local auto club or travel agency and get a trip tech. It's the same thing for design. Where are we going? What are we solving for? You try to find out what the constraints are. You want to find out what's going on with the users, what are their goals, what are their pain points, all these different things. Get all these requirements together, and then you venture out from there. In these days of lean and design thinking, which a lot of times it's not design and it's not thinking. I actually refer to design thinking, and there's a way to do it to get it done right. But the way a lot of people are executing design thinking, I refer to it, and some of you that are connected to me on LinkedIn have heard me say this, so I'm going to repeat it. It is a glorified spitballing session that really is nothing more than genius design, where people who are close to the design and think they know the users try to tell you what to do, and it's nothing more than spitballing. Everybody's guessing. Nobody's validating anything. It's gut. It's full of bias. UX professionals, part of our job, and it's one of the things you're going to hear later, but I'll mention it now. Just give you a tidbit, a touch of this one now. It is our job to manage bias. We have to manage our own bias. We have to manage the bias of our stakeholders. We have to manage the bias of the HIPPO. And for those of you that don't know what a HIPPO is, it's an acronym: big I, big H, little I, uppercase PPO, and it stands for the highest paid person's opinion in the room. I'm sure some of you have experienced this. If you have not, let me give you a little view into what I'm talking about. Picture yourself in a conference room and there's 8 people, different parts of the discipline, including a product owner, product manager, and maybe a couple of executives. Matter of fact, let's expand it and say there's 12 people in the room, including the HIPPO. And everybody knows who the HIPPO is. Everybody knows the person who's making all the bucks. Everybody knows the person that's calling all the shots. And as soon as that person is in the room, all the other people will listen to what that person says. And if that person says jump, everybody says how high, except for the UX professional. It is our job, again, to manage bias. It is our job we are the voice of reason. I heard somebody say that years ago, and it still sticks with me. We are the voice of reason. We're the one that will say, well, what about X, Y, and Z. Well, you know, we can't do that because according to heuristic principles, boom, 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 boom. We don't just say what we want to do or what we recommend. We come behind it with supporting data, supportive ideas, something it's not just coming from ourselves. It's not an opinion, it's an expert opinion. And an expert opinion is far different. And contrary to popular belief, this is also happening today, is that people think that they can learn UX in 6 months. I'm here to tell you, bubble burst alert, you cannot. Nobody. Not only can you not learn UX in 6 months, but when you become a UX professional, you have signed up for lifelong learning. I've been doing this total for 25 years. And somebody just said it, and I'm going to repeat what Maggie said. You never, ever, ever stop learning. I was at Team Detroit when the iPhone came out. Where were you? I was at Team Detroit, and we were doing all websites. All websites. Now here comes this phone. And at first, it wasn't mobile sites. It was all apps initially. And the mindset is, wow, what in the world? So we've been designing for this, and now we need to design for this. Remember, the screens weren't the iPhone wasn't bad, I mean, from a screen size perspective, but still, to go from 1024 by 768 to this, that's a big change. And what are the strategies? What do we need to do? So we needed to shift. And we need to understand, another bubble buster alert, UX is an infinite science. Have you ever had anybody compare being a developer or a coder to being a UX designer or UX professional? I'm going to say it that way because the design is only one part of what we do. And they talk about how they're the same. No, they are not. Coding, that's part of the computer science world, yes. However, it is what's called finite science. In other words, it has borders, it has limitations. When you're programming in Java, you have limitations. You are not going to hear something that the user has said, find out something about a user, find out something else about the business goals, and then decide to innovate and do something different with that Java. You are bound, whether it's Java, JSON, JavaScript, C++, I don't care what it is. Whatever that language is, you're bound by it. The example I just gave about when the iPhone came into play, and we were working on websites and some interactive TV stuff at the time as well. But we would shift every time something new came up. When the phone came out, we had to shift. When we went from apps to mobile sites, we had to shift. We went from mobile sites to responsive and adaptive, we had to shift. We always have to shift. The watch comes out, we have to shift. So it's what we do changes dramatically. And that's another reason why we always have to be in a learning mindset. And you have to, again, manage your bias, your personal bias at all times. You need to identify your bias and you need to suppress it, because if you don't suppress your bias, you are not going to be able to advocate for users. You will not be successful at all because you can't keep yourself out of the fray. Ever been in a meeting and somebody said, well, it doesn't look like something that I would do. That's nice. That's your input. Well, you're a sample set of one. Truth be told, another bubble buster. That's a sample set of one. UX professionals are working with sample sets of 20, 30, 40, 50, 500. We're working with broad sample sets. It's not enough for somebody to come in the room and, yes, this kind of stuff still happens today. Google does it like this. That's nice. But what is the mental model of the Google user? And does the mental model of the Google user, apply to what we're doing? Because if it does not, the fact that Google does it like that doesn't matter. In addition, think about, I'm sure some of you will remember when Apple was using the gray text on the white background on apple.com. Does anybody remember that? And people would walk in the room and say, well, you know, Apple does it like this. And I would think, well, you know, people have a hard time reading it because the contrast is really bad. So it's not enough. We have to operate with higher levels of ethics and integrity. We can't come in the room and tell somebody what we think. What we think does not matter. Will the user be able to use what it is that you're presenting to the world? Does it meet their needs? So this is where we are. So anyway, let's look at this chart now. I'm going on these tangents. I hope you're getting something out of it. I keep going on. I keep getting reminded of things. Let's get through this so we can get to the real crux of the day. This is a timeline. As I mentioned, I present in a lot of my talks because it's critical for us to level set and help everybody understand what our history is. And it's amazing. I was doing some work preparing for another talk, and I was looking at the Hippocratic Oath. That's the thing that people in the medical field look at as a core focus from an ethical perspective. And I'm actually working on one for UX as well. Let the cat out of the bag on that one. But one of the things I noticed about the Hippocratic Oath was that one of the things that it is important for those in the medical profession to heighten and to optimize their function is that they are pretty much required to be aware of their history. They need to know who preceded them, and instead of tearing them down, which is part of what's happening in UX today, build on top of it. Add on to it. Don't tear the building down. Just add another brick. Add 10 bricks. Whatever it is, but don't tear the building down. And I'm trying to keep myself from going on a tangent in the other direction. I'm sure we will cover that later. But so I want to make sure that everybody is set from a historical perspective so you can see where the discipline has been and where it's going. Another thing I should mention, I got to digress at this point, is because I come across a lot of people, I should say it that way. I come across a lot of people, many of them will say that they have imposter syndrome, and then the next thing you know, they're trying to teach 500 people. If you have imposter syndrome, then the next wise thing to do would be to do this, to zip it. Because if you don't have confidence, what are you telling people? I'm also here to bust bubbles about imposter syndrome. I actually came out and tell people often, you may think you have imposter syndrome and you actually may not. Now, the question is this: are you an imposter, or are you really who you say you are? Now, you say, I don't know. Then go find out, because until you find out who you are, you're not going to be able to make any progress. So let's throw imposter syndrome out for a moment. How skilled are you? And we're going to cover this again in a few moments when it comes to different aspects of UX. Just measure yourself. If you're, well, I'm pretty good here, I'm not so good over here, then good. That's a great first step. Realize what you bring to the table, realize what you don't, and then keep this in mind, and you will never have any imposter syndrome issues. When you recognize what you have in your favor, you're always going to continue to educate on that. And when you realize there's something, I'm weak in this area. I'm weak when it comes to research. I need to know more about research. Well, you just said it. You need to know more about research. That doesn't mean that you're not a researcher. Just go learn. You're never going to stop learning. So instead of going down this self-deprecating path where you are calling yourself something that you are not and claiming that you're an imposter when you really are not, you're a learner. We're all learning. I've been in this for a long time and I'm still learning, and I will always be learning. That doesn't make me any less of what I am. So I am on this is another campaign I'm doing, Down with Imposter Syndrome. Interestingly, imposters never think they have imposter syndrome, but anyway, that's for another time. I just want to appeal to anybody out there that thinks you have imposter syndrome. Just get the thing. Yes, Maggie, down with imposter syndrome. It's making a bunch of people money. If they can get you to believe that you have imposter syndrome, they can start ripping you off. But if you're not good at information architecture, then go learn about it. If you need to know more about heuristics, then go learn about it. If you need to know more about interaction design principles, and you're trying to really get a grasp on the things that Bruce Tognazzini has talked about in his heuristics associated with interaction design, then go learn about it. If you want to be better, I'm not good at identifying visceral impact in design, then go learn about it. That doesn't mean that you just lost your credentials because you don't know something. The person standing next to you on both sides doesn't know something. So what? Just go learn it. Problem solved. No more imposter syndrome. No more imposter syndrome. It's amazing, but if you don't know, then find out. If you know, then maintain that and keep your eyes out, because something is liable to change at any given time that requires you and I to know more. But this imposter syndrome stuff is for the birds. History. The first person ever to be referred to as a UX designer is Don Norman. And ironically, it's really funny. I'm referring to Debbie again, but it was a really funny conversation. She was interacting with somebody and she mentioned Don Norman, and the person said, "Who in the world is he and why should I care?" One of the first people you should ever learn about, one of the first 5 people you should ever learn about, yes, that you should ever learn about when it comes to user experience design, user experience work, human-computer interaction, is Don Norman. He was working for Apple, and I've been sharing this a lot lately. Ironically, he was not working on websites. He was working on iPods and things like that. Yes, the UX, the big OG. Eileen said he has so much knowledge. He brings so much to the table. If you've never read the Design of Everyday Things, please treat yourself to that book. And you will find not only how amazing this guy is, but you'll also get another tidbit. When I mentioned Jesse James Garrett a little bit ago, Don Norman, Jesse James Garrett, Nathan Shetroff, Susan Weinschenk, a bunch of these OGs, if you will, Richard Saul Werman, these are people, these are the foundational folks of our discipline. How dare somebody think that they are getting something that's going to help when it's really tearing down the building? Never tear down the OG building. Never tear it down. But the thing I was going to say was, these good UX information has a long shelf life. You can read anything from back in the day about UX, and it still holds water today. Jacob Nielsen, somebody mentioned, Vanetta mentioned Jacob Nielsen. You got to read his old stuff. Don Norman. There was somebody else, Alan Cooper. How many of you are familiar with Alan Cooper? If you've never read the book, The Inmates Are Running the Asylum, for those of you that are having trouble with problematic stakeholders and you're trying to figure out more about the reality of that type of thing and how to manage them and what's really going on, a breakdown of that, please read The Inmates Are Running the Asylum. Because a lot of times when the hippo takes over, the inmates are running the asylum. That's what he's getting at. That book was written a long time ago about face, talking about the interaction design principles. The first person to work on personas, he was the first one, Alan Cooper was. And speaking of personas, Tamara Atlin, she's today's guru on personas. But if you never heard her name, don't feel bad. Just thank God that the light is, that the scales came off your eyes. So now you know, so great. And never beat yourself up because you just learned something. Please stop doing that. I know somebody out there is doing it. Please stop doing it. Again, you're not an imposter. You're not a perp, nothing like that. You just say, wow, I didn't know about that. Great. We all say that practically every day about something. So just keep going forward. That's all I want to see people do. So 1995, huge milestone, the first person where the term UX was used in their job title. Interestingly, though, it was not, the discipline was not called UX yet. And the title of UX was not really applied to people's titles at their jobs mainstream for about another 10 years. About another 10 years. You didn't start seeing it till around 2005. So I want to make sure that people know that. Right after that, the website, no matter of fact, about the same time, that's when some of you remember when we used to get those old America Online floppies in the mail. all the time, and the CDs that you probably made a wind chime out of. Some of you probably did it. No, I wanted to, but the internet starts to take off, and of course everybody's running to get on the web, right? And but they were forgetting a few things. These people are out here. Some people had 14.4 baud modems. Anybody remember those? 28.8 modems. Remember the goofy "You've Got Mail" and all the dial-up noises that we used to get whenever we were connecting to the internet. We stay connected to the internet all day now. Back then, you would connect and disconnect. But at any rate, everybody's rushing to get on the web. And as everybody is rushing to get on the web, users are being left in the dark. Now, Don Norman started to see that, and we started to see what he was addressing later when it came down to it. But you got this mad rush, and everybody's getting on the web, but nobody's paying attention to the users. So in 1998 to 2000, where you have the rush, now the people started getting on the web about 95, 96. But the reason I call out 98 to 2000 is because that's what's known as the Polar Bear book was written in about 97, 98. That was Peter Morville and Lou Rosenfeld, a couple other names that folks need to know. And because that's part of our history. They wrote a book for O'Reilly about information architecture. And that's when UX started to enter the mainstream about that time. It's also in parallel with the dot-com bust, when everything fell apart because people got sick of the fact that they're coming to your websites, but your website really isn't helping me at all. It's a real pain. And so the studies, the work on information architecture started to help spur the discipline. And down 2000, 2005, the vast majority of the early UX positions were in creative agencies. Talk about agency work. That's most of where the UX positions were available. The funny thing is, when you went to work for an agency, and I worked for Wonderman, I worked for MR McCann, I worked for Digitize. You see the icons here. I worked in conjunction with Ogilvy. I just threw a little BBDO in there just to give somebody else a shout out that I didn't work for. But they understood the value of UX. They understood how a UX person fit on the team, and they made sure that the teams were able to operate with minimal to no dysfunction whatsoever. That's key. Because when we jump to the next one, 2005 to 2013, in between these two, research was done by IBM. I'm sure some of you heard about this. Research was done by IBM and NASA about user experience. This is when the door was just blown off its hinges, because they found out that for every dollar you invest in UX, you can get up to anywhere from one study said anywhere from $10 to $100 in return. Another study said you could get up to $250 in return. So the corporations, they dropped their jaw. Really? Because you're talking exec now. I call it talking exec. We also have to learn bubble busting moment alert again. A lot of us have trouble interacting with stakeholders because we talk to them as if we're talking to another UX professional. We talk to them using our buzzwords and our lingo. And so as a result, a lot of times they don't know what in the world we're talking about. And because you only have so long to get your point across to an executive level person anyway, you waste that time throwing your buzzwords out there that you're excited about, and you're just dancing around all your words, and they're going, what? And then they blow you off. You're done. You lost your 15 seconds. You lost your elevator pitch. Your time is over, and route. And so at any rate, when they came up with this ROI information, that resonated with them tremendously. So from 2005 to 2013, corporations started getting more on the bandwagon. More corporations started getting on the bandwagon. Coca-Cola, who's known for their UX practice, by the way, for those of you that did not know that. Whirlpool, known for their UX practice. A lot of people scream about Amazon, but Amazon, they actually did a ton of work in information architecture. And while some people might not like Amazon, where is Barnes & Noble? Where's Borders? Amazon survived and thrived, and now they rule that world, whereas their former competitors are gone. Their emphasis on UX is another illustration as what the impact of UX can be in an organization. So I just wanted to drop that little tidbit today. Humana, and of course IBM continued in their growth with regard to UX. Still struggling today. I used to work there too, but it's because they're always acquiring organizations and things get a little crazy, but they do have a good, in general, a good practice inside. There's some other things there I'll talk about probably in my podcast, but not here. When we go forth to 2014, the boom is underway. You see articles everywhere talking about how great it is to be in user experience, and it's one of the up and coming fields, and we all need to be paying attention to it. You want to be in an up and coming field? Consider UX. Everybody's doing all these articles. Oop, I went forward. Not supposed to see that yet. And everybody, these jobs everywhere. So you have this boom, the employment boom. Not enough people to fill the jobs, right? So now we start to enter a semblance of the dark ages. Because with all these people in these positions that are popping up everywhere, and you don't have enough people, qualified people, it's also around the same time, around 2013 to 2014, is when the boot camps and the MOOCs, M-O-O-C, that's another acronym. So if you go to Coursera or Udemy and you see UX courses, those are called MOOCs. That's where these courses start to pop up because they see, hey, there's a shortage. And people are they're interested in UX, but they don't have the skill and the knowledge. Oh, and also, almost left this out, universities, still behind to this day. Universities, very few universities have UX, HCI, or experience design programs. Very few. And even fewer have them online, just so you're aware. So now we've got a problem happening in the educational world. We've got a problem brewing because of all these positions, and you don't have the right people to fill them. And also, one of the big things that happened around that time is people trying to fill the positions instead of going out and recruiting. They just took people in their organization, just made them UX people. I have a term for those kind of people. I call them retrofits. Retrofit can work, but it may or it may not. It's a crapshoot. So just so you're aware. So now here we are, 2015, sorry, to 2020. We have what I refer to as the wild, wild west of UX. 5 years beyond the explosion that now we still have positions. People say they can't fill the positions. They really don't know how to hire for them. I want you guys that are getting into UX to be aware of what you're walking into. Are you doing well to pursue UX? Absolutely. But be aware, and I've got a talk up on YouTube. I highly recommend you take a look at it. It's called Navigating the Whirlpool. It's about UX recruiting and trying to market yourself in this arena because it's like a whirlpool. Because companies don't know who they're hiring a lot of times. Teams don't know. They don't know who's on their team. It's pretty crazy. It's a wild, wild west. People are falsifying their credentials, trying to get these jobs. As a former manager, I have seen the large stack of resumes only to realize that there was only one of them. After looking at 200 resumes, there was only one that had any real merit. This is happening on a global level. I talk to people all over the world that talk about it. So this wild, wild west is real. You want to make sure that you're not a part of the problem. So how do you do that? You educate yourself. You commit to continued education. You make sure that you have a strong, valuable presence in your organization. When you find juniors and you have the ability, help to bring them up higher. And you don't have to be a senior to bring somebody up higher. If somebody, you know that they have less experience than you, just help them to get better. Don't worry, throw the senior stuff and all that out of the window. Because actually a lot of seniors today, they're not really seniors. Bubble busting moment. They're not really seniors. They just got the title. I was interacting with somebody, some of you may have seen this on LinkedIn, who is a senior at a very large organization and was wondering why I said what I said on the same line of what I'm telling you right now. They're trying to figure out why I said what I said, and that person did the same thing. They went from doing and having absolutely no experience in UX to being a team lead. Isn't mommy proud? dude, you don't know, you don't really know anything yet. And people are not being honest with themselves. I'm happy for you. If you got that, I probably would have taken it too. But that means that you need to do some double time and go and get the knowledge so that your knowledge is actually reflective of your title. Because no matter what position you're in, you still represent a discipline that, for all intents and purposes, is only 20 years old from a visibility standpoint. So people don't know what UX is. That's one of the reasons why. You're getting into UX, you're not just getting a position. You are responsible in these early days, still early days. UX always needs its diaper changed. And in this particular day and time, you are always, everybody under the sound of my voice is a representative of this discipline in one way or another. And other people, their view of UX is going to be impacted by you. So if you are one of those people willing to falsify who you are, if you're one of those people that somebody saw your recommendation, but you can't explain why the recommendation, then we got problems. You impacting me, I'm way over here outside of Detroit. You're way over somewhere in New Jersey and you're impacting me because I'm going to interact with that same person that you just left walking out the room, scratching their head because they can't figure out which way is up. We all need to embrace the fact that we're all responsible for the well-being of this discipline, right? We are. I'm trying to keep my eyes on the chat. But now let's get to the big part. My wife speaks French. I don't, but I'm going to try this anyway. Today's pièce de résistance. Did I get that right? Anybody know what I'm talking about when I say that? The pièce de résistance. That's my attempt at, well, usually my attempt at French is something that from one of my favorite I love cheesy movies, and Better Off Dead was hilarious, and somebody was using it in French in that movie, and he said, mercy buckets. You know, that's about that's about as good as I'm going to get trying to speak some French. What you see in front of you today is, I actually call it two things now. I call it in general, the landscape of UX. So if somebody asks you what UX is, or you hear somebody talking about what UX is, and they're not talking about what you see in front of you, they either don't know, they could be completely innocent and don't know, or they could be ignorant. And when I say ignorant, I do mean that as a word that casts major aspersions. And I'm going to play a little etymology game with you for a moment. When people hear the word ignorant, they usually take that, what do you mean I'm ignorant? Please hear the word ignorant. The root word of the word ignorant is to ignore. Ignore is a verb. It means that you don't want to know. So when we talk about somebody being ignorant, we're not talking about somebody who doesn't know. I'm talking about somebody who doesn't want to know. And if you don't want to know, that's a problem. That is a problem. Everybody's on this call today. I'm assuming you're here because you want to know. And so for that reason, this is the biggest bubble busting moment, because, I mean, this quickly, I don't know how we can do this, but how many of you never realized that UX was this big before I even get into it? I can only see a few people, but how many of you never realized it? Yeah, and yes, you can. Somebody said, can they have this as a shirt? You can get it as I actually have made this available multiple times, and I will make it available after it's done. Go and get it blown up. Put it on the wall in your organization. Tell the world that this is what UX is, because people usually try to make us think that it's just the two letters in the middle and take all the stuff on the outer perimeter and remove it. And then it becomes subjective, where people are defining you. Oh, I think UX is this. And then they drop the mic and they think they've said or done something. Yes, change the world. That's what we got to do. Because right now the world is going in the wrong direction. It's going in the wrong direction. Would you let your friend go down the road where there's a big sign that says the road is out? No. When people try to demonize me for taking a stand about this stuff, I don't want to see people misled. I don't want to see people going the wrong way. I don't want to see the discipline be devalued. I don't want to see it trivialized. I don't want to see it commoditized. And I would hope that other people are in the same frame of mind today too. This is UX, everybody. You think you know UX? And again, if you didn't realize it was this, no problem. Just say, now I know, and celebrate. Don't engage again. I'm going to repeat this. Don't get involved in self-deprecation. Just say, now I know, man, am I grateful. Because you could have missed this talk today, and you would have talked to 10 people and telling them something completely incorrect, damaging your own UX maturity level in your own organization because of what you did not know. Dangerous business. So let's talk about these, though. I said I call this two things: the landscape of UX. That's the general name for it. But you'll find another talk that I did out there on YouTube called the 4 pillars of UX. And this is what they are: heuristics and usability, research. I'm sorry, went the wrong way. Let's go back the other way. And there is no rhyme or reason to the direction. And I'm just jumping backwards. Information architecture is number 2. And we'll talk about these in a minute and more detail over the whole course of the whole series. Research is critical, of course. And this is something, here's another bubble busting moment. Do you realize that there are 99 different types of research that we could potentially use? 99. How many have you used? And then here's the comforting word behind that. We only use 8 to 12. In mainstream UX operations, you're only going to use 8 to 12 of those. Guerrilla testing, for example, remote usability testing, they're listed here. Affinity diagramming, because you can only do affinity diagramming when you're getting data from other people, not sitting there and coming up with it on your own. Ethnography, eye tracking, first click testing, A/B testing, and then multivariate testing. And a lot of people don't realize there's a difference between A/B testing and multivariate testing. I'm purposely not going to talk about the difference today. I'm just going to leave that out there and leave you hanging so you can go dig into it to give you a little more homework. And somebody just mentioned user journey mapping. Journey mapping is awesome as long as folks use it right. And as long as the data that's used is accurate. A lot of people today have engaged in journey mapping and its little brother, experience mapping. And the data is, sometimes you can, if you have some high level data, you can do it the same way you would do a proto persona, but you need to validate that data. You don't want any data in a journey or an experience map that's not accurate, because people are using that as a point of reference. So if something is not accurate, somebody will use inaccurate data to make a decision. That falls back on you. So be careful of the data that you put in there. But journey mapping, beautiful, especially so that you can pay attention to micro experiences. And some people are, what in the world is that? Well, there's a couple other things here in research: task analysis and needs analysis. A task analysis, I mentioned both of them, but I'm only going to talk about one. A task analysis, say a person wants to reset their password. That's the task. That task consists of how many steps? Off the top of my head, 7 steps. It depends on what the process is. Let's just say, for the sake of this illustration today, that there's 5 steps. And then you break those 5 steps down, and those 5 steps, you might be able to break them down to an even more granular level. And all those small aspects of that experience, those are all micro experiences. And that's where people get upset. That's where people hate brands. People hate micro experiences. And so if the UX team is not identifying them and speaking to them and making sure they're optimal, guess what's going to happen? That's what we're there for. So research, just a few aspects of research there. Next and last, and this is where UI falls, interaction and interface design. They go together, because if there is an interface, then there will be some type of interactivity. So those two things go together. Those two things go together. And you have Gestalt theory. Style guides are a part of that. That's where your augmented reality and your virtual reality. Thanks. I saw somebody mention it earlier, because I said AR and VR, but I don't think I mentioned them. but that's what AR stands for, augmented reality and virtual reality, which is really big today. And so there's a lot of people with inroads into UX now because of the rise of those technologies. And every time a technology rises, there's another opportunity for UX. And so if you ever see that and you're interested, dive into it. Dive into it. By the way, passion is our driver. I'm sure if I said, raise your hand if you want to excel at UX, everybody's hand would go up. And if I was to give you one magic bullet to achieve all your goals, it's passion. Always embrace your passion. Your passion will get you places when other things will not. It will keep you going when all the doors slam in your face. Your passion is going to keep you going, so never let go of your passion. It's really big. So again, the 4 pillars: heuristics and usability, information architecture, research, interaction and interface design, and there are outliers: UX strategy, typography, cognitive psychology, behavioral economics, critical thinking, security issues, consistency, innovation. And yes, I do have lean UX on there because I believe there's a way to do lean UX, and it is right. It's just the way that it's happening mainstream it's actually killing us. It's doing a lot of damage. That just means lean. The word lean just means to throw out the waste. So it means that you're just working faster. That's all. You don't need a book for that. Throw the book out. Emotional intelligence is key. The more emotionally intelligent you are as a UX professional, the more you're going to be able to accomplish. You can look up an old talk I did on the need for emotional intelligence in UX. Go to SlideShare, do a look for that. You'll find a whole talk on it. I'm actually going to be re-recording it soon and putting it up on YouTube. But if you could have the best artifacts and deliverables in the world, lack EQ, and nobody will ever know, because you don't value relationships. You don't know how to interact with anybody. You have no diplomacy. You have no tact. You're upset when people don't like your recommendations. EQ will deliver you from all of those budding problems, all of those. So a lot going on here. I'm not going to try to speak to all of them today. I just want to paint the picture so you know. This is UX. Much bigger than people think. And if you believe, I feel for you. If you ever fell for the you can learn UX in 6 months bit, and no, same as always, I'm not condemning you. I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I just want you to wake up. I couldn't learn it in 6 months, neither can you. And you certainly are not going to learn UX in 6 months from somebody that just graduated a week before your class started. Yeah, people are doing that. That's grossly unethical. If you have the money, go to university. If you don't, there's other ways to do it. I will put this on record now. You want to learn about UX and you're starting from scratch? You want to save money and get a good experience? Go to Coursera. There's a course there that it's like, last I saw, it was like $49 a month. And the course is managed by University of Michigan, who has a fantastic HCI program. And they will teach you about the basics of user experience and teach you about research. So you will get a nice, sober, sound foundation instead of trying to take you for all your money and then give you a bunch of promises and really can't come through. Oh, by the way, somebody tells you, bubble busting alert, again, somebody tells you that they guarantee you a job, they're lying. I've been doing this for 25 years. I can't get a job. Not where I want to. I mean, I've got one. I'm speaking in general. You would not believe how many times doors have slammed in my face and somebody has said, we have other people that match our requirements better than yours. What? I've got everything. No, that's just another way of saying we don't want to pay you. And there are a lot of people who have reached my level of seniority, they end up consulting. So nobody can promise you anything. So somebody tells you, you're guaranteed to get a job. That's your cue to go the other way, because now they're playing a game. You're supposed to believe them without evidence. You're supposed to believe them at face value. Respect yourself more than that. I'm letting you know, I don't want to see you in trouble. Leave those people alone. And well, what about the program? They're going to pay me. If I get into the program, then they'll give me a stipend. That's just paying you to, no, I'll just put it that way. No, you don't want to do that. Make the investment yourself, because even no matter what you pay, whether it's the $49 at Coursera or it's a university program that might cost you $22,000 over the time of the program, your sweat equity is still the thing that you need. I've seen bad students at university level, and they don't demonize university no more than the university demonizes them. But what do you bring to the table? Don't put it on the learning resource. What do you bring to the table so that you can get value out of your experience? And that's the last thing I want to leave you with on today. Ride your passion. It takes sweat equity to become a UX professional. You're not going to learn it in 6 months, and you're going to be learning the rest of your life. So just get on the boat. We never get off this boat. And just make sure that you commit to being the best that you can be. And one last thing. Start working to be better at judging your resources. Because one of the problems and one of the things that I'll be talking about over the course of this series is that remember that the history, the timeline I showed you, and I said that UX is under siege? Or that's what I was going to say. And I said that 2013 things start happening. UX has been under siege ever since then. With the people who aren't qualified getting UX jobs, and people putting bogus titles on their resumes, and companies not knowing how to hire. It's a barnstorm out here right now. It's a whirlpool. And so if you're gonna ride this out, let's do it the right way. And I will be out here to help you all I can. People ask me questions all the time. I had to shut down my screen on LinkedIn because we first started meeting to start the event today. Because people are always asking me stuff. I want to see everybody succeed, but I also want to see you succeed the right way. So please commit to doing that. Be ethical in building yourself. Be ethical in going forward, and realize that if you apply yourself to this thing and you do it the right way, you understand what UX is, and make it a point to learn these elements, you're going to make yourself more valuable. Your users are going to be happy. You're going to be happy. Your family's going to be happy. Your company's going to be happy. And all the rest of us UXers out here, when we see you accomplishing things, I'm going to be on the side, do it all the time, rejoicing because I see something that somebody is accomplishing that's helping take this discipline further. Let's do that today. Instead of reading books that don't mean anything, going to websites that have no real benefit. Beware of Medium, by the way, Medium articles. I'll explain why in another one of these sessions. Make sure you vet out your resources. Put together what we call a personalized learning network. Identify sources you can go to help you grow and to build you. And make sure that you always have them listed out. You visit them regularly, and it'll help make you the best. I'll give you one, and then I'm done. My favorite UX resource is uxmatters.com. All they have is articles, but they have some of the best, well-vetted out articles I have ever seen in my career at that website. If you do not have that bookmark, please do that today and make sure that you always pay attention. I know Pabini, been connected with them for some time. They do a fantastic job, and they only publish things on their site that they have validated the value for. That's it. It's not a free-for-all like Medium. It's operated like a true media source, the way a newspaper, the way your article has to get approved by an editor first before it gets out there. So that's my last statement for today. So that's it. Again, I hope you got something out of it. This is a foundation for what we're going to do. We're going to be busting lots of bubbles. If you're courageous, you'll be here. I wish you all the best. And I'll give it back to the students of UX. Thanks, everybody, for the opportunity. Again, I hope you enjoyed the session today, and I hope you got a lot out of it.
Thank you so much, Darren. I have been hearing that from some people that this feels like a coaching session, or this feels like a slap in the face that they've always wanted. It's awesome to just hear. I'm like rapidly writing down all of these notes, and it's just awesome to kind of, like you said, just wake up and be okay with learning new stuff. And I think that that's so, so, so important for us students, and that's why we're called students of UXD. Doesn't matter if you're an actual student, because we're always going to be students of UX. Yes. And I think that that's just this whole event is a great reminder to, maintain this passion of learning, which I really appreciate. So I know that we have actually some people asking a few questions during the event. And if you don't mind, we can go ahead and just look at those for a second to end this.
Sure thing. And I tried to see some of them. I can only see some of them while
Yeah,
I was
for
looking at
sure. That's totally fine. And yeah, so we can spend like the last 10 minutes just doing a short Q&A. And from Syeth, it says, do you believe that UX is a profession or a practice?
both. It's both. It's a profession, a practice, it's a discipline, which means that it needs to be cultivated. It means that it's a science. It means that it requires a scientific approach in order to get the principles under your belt so
Mm-hmm.
that you can properly represent it. That means that it has a code of ethics associated with it. Yeah, all of those things, all of the above.
Cool. I love how it doesn't have to be one or the other. It's not necessarily just one thing. So I love that. And Patrice asks, could you talk more about some of the transitions that you made mid-career as well as finding entry-level positions? What similarities do you see between the UX profession and classroom teaching?
Oh, wow. The UX profession and classroom teaching. So, because I heard like 2 or 3 questions there. I'll
Right.
tackle that last one first. Um, when it comes to UX, the UX profession and classroom teaching, because I now am officially an LX professional, who, by the way, was actually dabbling in LX. I found out that somebody claimed to have coined that acronym in like 2015. I've been talking about LX for years, so I guess I missed that opportunity. But I, for a long time, have felt, I mean, I've been going to school online since about 2002, 2003. I got my bachelor's online. I got my 2 masters online. I got a grad cert online. I'm getting my PhD online. And by the way, this is my 3rd track going after a PhD. I left 2 other schools because I didn't like them. But in all of these things, even remembering my classroom days and so looking at it from a student perspective, as well as an instructor perspective, the actual UX principles are at play, whether you're a classroom teacher or whether you're trying to help somebody understand and optimize use of your mobile app. Or trying to exercise, you just got your brand new PlayStation 5 and somebody rolled out, you work for a company that rolled out a bunch of new games. That's big right now. For those of you that don't know, UX in game design is growing immensely. And you need to make sure, there are people actually now talking about, oh, this game has a fantastic user experience, and breaking it down and giving you the understanding. So it's like, it goes back to my statement about it being pervasive. My room, I'm in my office at home. That's a virtual background. That's not my office. But people ask me that. My office has a UX to it. When you sit in your car or you get on a subway, that experience has a UX to it. When you go to the grocery store, everybody realize you go to the grocery store and they have the signs up to let you know what's in every aisle? That's an exercise in information architecture. And I'll spend one whole segment just talking about information architecture. And we need to spend time on that because it's been forgotten. Information architecture has been abandoned by a lot of people. I've talked to boot camp folks, graduates, or former attendees. We didn't learn anything about information architecture. Everybody has said that. And information architecture is what we used to be. How in the world can you be not learned? I got ridiculed for bringing up information architecture on a multi-million-dollar project just because people didn't know. So it's everywhere. UX is pervasive. And you see how big that illustration is. It's really easy to find different pieces that apply to anything. So it's no different to me would be the direct answer. It's no different to me.
I love that. And going with that, the first part of the question says, could you talk about some of the transitions specifically that you made mid-career and finding entry-level positions? Because I know that you were talking about in your segment, like, make sure you apply to things that you actually.
Yes. That
Yeah.
I was working for OnStar, and my title there was, I was a curriculum developer, but I was also starting to do information architecture work, specifically in their help system that the agents, if anybody have OnStar and you've ever called in, I was responsible for training the people that would talk to you when you would call in. And so they would go into a help system to look up answers to questions or issues that were coming up. So I'm doing all this information architecture work on top of the fact that I was doing the freelance web design, where I was doing everything. I was the creative director. I was doing the information architecture. I was doing the interaction design. I was designing logos. I was doing everything. And so, but during the day, it was all about training. And so, and I challenge, if you're thinking about a transition, do this. Try to understand what you really like doing. And that sounds oversimplified, but a lot of people don't do it. They're so busy trying to pay the bills that they don't take the time to look at what their bent is or what they really enjoy. And it's a wonderful thing if you could ever get a job doing something that you really enjoy, because then it's like you're never working again. Like if you do something you enjoy, you go, hey, I'm going to work. You know, that's really what's going on, because you're going to get there and then you're just going to have a ball. So I happened to look at everything that I was doing. I thought I was about to go and I was on the verge of going to Boise State to get a master's in education. I just finished my bachelor's degree in IT, and I want to go. This is what I'm doing. I'm the trainer guy. I'm the instructional design guy. I already had 4 certifications, including a master trainer. What can I do more? Well, let's go get a master's degree. But when I sat down and looked, you know what? I really like this information architecture thing. So what do I do? So I start applying. That's the first step. Apply, but do something. I have an exercise that I do. I don't know if any of you have ever done this. I'll take a job posting, I'll copy it from out of LinkedIn or Glassdoor or wherever, and I paste it into Word or whatever word processing. You don't have to use Word, but something that allows you to add comments. And I start to audit the job posting based on what I bring to the table. I mean, if you have the interview, you're going to need to talk about it. So you want to start that exercise early. Okay, they say they want X number of years, so and so and so and so. And so I add a comment in Word and I put my notes on the side. Once I'm done evaluating, going through that entire job post and evaluating how much how solid of a candidate I am, I should say, then I'll post for it. You don't want to, I mean, every once in a while I've posted for something I didn't apply for because I just wanted to see what their response might be, because sometimes you never know. There are positions that let you grow into them every once in a while. UX is not one of those that you really want to grow into that much because it's really big. And another reason that it's dangerous to do that is you never know, especially if you don't know much about UX. One of the things I've learned to do is to try to evaluate an organization's UX maturity level before accepting a job there. Because if they are, we can talk about that another time too, UX maturity levels. I've done talks on that multiple times. Mm-hmm. And if somebody's UX maturity level is really low, they will not understand you. They will not know how to value you. You just walked into a company full of landmines. And this one might shock some of you, but as somebody who almost died because of things that were happening at work before, I'm telling you, you don't want to be in that position. When you can't sleep at night, some of you probably already know how that feels, for whatever the reason might be behind it. You don't want your job to be the course of that or the source of it. Where you wake up in the middle of the night, you can't go to sleep because you're worried about how you get treated at work, or you're worried about all day. You don't want to go through that type. We work to make a living. We work to make ends meet. We work to apply something so we can be responsible members of this society. You don't want to go to work and be subjected to mental abuse. You don't want to go to work and be subjected to emotional abuse. Nobody wants to do that. And the sad thing is, there are a lot of narcissistic, troubled leaders, and you could be walking into a really terrible situation. So you want to get good at identifying it up front. Mm-hmm. And yes, there are ways to do it because they'll tell you with a terrible job posting a lot of times. That's all over the place. And I'll never forget the guy who's over the professors at Kent State, Paul Sherman, has done a talk. If you ever get to see this, I highly recommend you see this too. or watch it. He does a talk about, it's called about the UX unicorn, that the UX unicorn is dead. And he takes an actual job description from a well-known company and breaks down to show you how many people they're really trying to hire, how many people, how many roles this person's actually filling. And if you once you get beyond 2 or 3, you're in dangerous territory. They're going to run you in the ground and think nothing about it. And they will send flowers to your funeral and replace you. So make sure you, and I mean that with all intensity, you want to respect yourself. A lot of people don't respect themselves when it comes to the professional world. They are willing to sell out, and they're willing to play games, and they will put their life on the line. And that's unfair to you, your family, your loved ones, your kids. It's unfair. You don't want to be one of those people. And I won't say part of this. I will say this. I went to a company once, and they said that the travel rate would be about 35%. Within about a month, it was 75 to 80%. Actually, within 2 months. And I would come home on the weekends just to attend a local event, change the clothes, and get right back on the plane. And long story short, a few months later, I was in the hospital, and I was almost like bleeding out. I lost almost half my blood, without me getting into any details. You don't want to be in that position. And I was in a tug of war between 4 factions who did not, and none of them understood or respected UX. And I was almost a sacrificial lamb. I don't want to see other people go through that. I get ridiculed for jumping around a lot. I jump around a lot because I respect myself, and I don't regret it. I regret it, but I don't regret it. I will jump around if people, I hope I found my forever home. That's what I believe, that I found my forever home at Michigan State. But I hate the fact that I did not see what I should have seen at some of those other companies. And yes, it was almost literally tragic. And my wife is on the call. I know she remembers some of the things that happened as a result. And she's had to spend time in the hospital with me. I never spent the night in the hospital before that happened. Never in my life. So don't want to see people go through that. Oh, by the way, somebody did ask about the YouTube channel, UX Uncensored. There is a UX Uncensored. I'll move, wrong way. You see UX Uncensored, the logo back there. There is and I'm actually going to be recording. I do take requests. Send me topics. I'll record stuff. I'm talking about 3-minute deal. Just boom, boom, boom. Let's just cover a topic, just touch on it and get on. I'm planning on going into major production. I'm sitting up under my brand new lighting setup here.
I love that.
You guys are the first people to see that. So there's the UX Uncensored channel today has a few talks that I delivered at other places. I like to make them available. And but I'm going to start producing brand new content in the not too distant future. So if you have an idea, a topic you'd love to hear me talk about, just let me know.
Awesome.
People do it all the time. You might as well join in.
Yes, that's awesome. And I know that there are still some questions out there, but we are at time. So everyone, Darren's on LinkedIn. I'm sure he will be more than happy to just give you a shout out and answer your questions through there. And so we'll definitely keep note of, your YouTube channel that's here. We have notes on all of the people that Darren had mentioned in his talk. So we'll make sure to get that over to you all. And I am so happy and so excited that you're here. Yes, Darren.
I almost forgot. My podcast, I kept mentioning it generically. It's called The World of UX with DarrenHood. Mm-hmm. New episodes come out on Tuesdays. You can find it anywhere where podcasts are available. You can find it, whether it's Apple, Google, Amazon has podcasts available now. We're listed there, or Spotify. And another place where if you got a topic, let me know. I'll talk about it. I'm also planning on doing something in the not too distant future called Talking Shop, where we actually get on the phone or get on a conference call with 4 or 5 people, and we just talk from the hip. No planned topics, no nothing. So I'll be getting information out about that to have some of you might want to be on there. We just get on there and we just talk about UX for like a half hour or so, and we're done.
I love that. I
Leave
love
to
that
you.
idea. So many great resources coming out of you, Darren. I am so excited and so happy that you are now basically a part of the Students of UX family, and we're so grateful for you. And thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for coming today, for sticking around for those questions. Remember to not forget to fill in the feedback form. We always want to make sure, and we are always learning of how to make this experience better for you. Make sure to share your takeaways. And with that, I hope that everybody has a beautiful rest of your weekend. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank
Bye-bye,
you.
everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Good one.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye, Vanetta.
Thank you. Thanks, Vicky.
Thank you.
And Julia.